Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, and my friends, today we're talking fighting game characters. Now, fighting game characters are definitely a pretty crazy bunch. We have things like boxing kangaroos, we have things like literal race cars fighting kung fu masters, and we have whatever Ganon was. I kind of never really got his deal. Not sure what he's about. Fighting game characters are a very colorful cast with a wide array of great personalities, and today we are talking about Baiken from Guilty Gear. So as of the time of this recording, Baiken will be making her debut in Guilty Gear Strive specifically later in January of 2022, although she's a long-time series stalwart. She's been there in the start of the original Guilty Gear, although as a hidden character, in the Guilty Gear X series, and also in the Guilty Gear Xrd series. So who is Baiken? Baiken is a badass lady samurai, and one of the first things you might notice about Baiken is she's missing an arm and an eye. Now, how did that happen exactly? Well, we'll get into it in her greater overall story, but it definitely informs the kind of person she is. Baiken is not a happy-go-lucky character. Baiken is, the most generous I can say is, she's a sourpuss. Baiken is gruff, Baiken is usually angry, Baiken is definitely a loner. She may be a super strong samurai, master of the blade, and an all-around killing machine, but all these things were very hard earned. She did not have an easy life. Even with her very obvious handicaps of missing an eye and an arm, she's kind of mastered that exactly. As in place of her arm, you might find claws, you might find a studded mace, you might find an actual just cannon. She's definitely made the best of a bad situation. Baiken is resourceful, if nothing else. Now, before we get to her greater story, let's talk about how she plays in the games traditionally. Now, game to game, she can be a little bit different. However, I guess the easiest way to classify Baiken is that of a defensive character. A lot of her tool set is just kind of geared towards defense, frankly. This is in part for two main moves. She has a lot of counter-style moves, and also the tatami. The tatami is effectively just a giant Japanese-style mat. And it has a very big hitbox, and the big thing, especially when done in the air, is it will fall down. You can do this while advancing, you can do this while retreating, it doesn't really matter. It's an incredibly effective way to control space, as it's just there on the screen the whole time. If it falls from the air, it's a giant active hitbox the whole time. So it's a giant defensive wall at points. Other things, like while in the air, she has a sword swing from her non-existent arm. Better in the older games because she could tiger knee it, making it effectively an instant overhead. And then we have her defensive options. She has a charge and her counters. The charge is basically armored. She can bulldog her way through anything while running forward. And depending on how the game you're playing is, the counters are a little bit different. In Guilty Gear Xrd, they are an active counter. She will raise her arm in defense and then just kind of block whatever, and you have options from there. Or in older games, you can just skip that part. She actually can attack you right out from block stun. So effectively, she can make a lot of unpunishable moves punishable now. It's a very strong concept to say the least, so that's why it's a little toned down in later revisions of the game. Not to say the versions you see in it in Guilty Gear Xrd are weak by any stretch, because they are not, just not as overwhelming. Especially because her counter system in older games, she could hit you with a debuff on top of the counter. So she could remove your ability to like dash, backdash, like a lot of your movement stuff. She can make it so all hits against you are counter hits. Or just make it that the straight up next attack is unblockable. So those were very strong. So a lot of that got toned down later down the road. So effectively, she's a character of patience. Not to say she can't go crazy as well, because she definitely can, but nominally, a lot of her moveset just relies on you kind of making the right read and frustrating your opponent. Some might complain, oh, Baiken's playing a very different game than everyone else, but that's the beauty of Guilty Gear, because almost every character is playing their own game completely different from everyone else. Just, when it comes to defense, a lot of people like offense more than defense, So when they hit the wall, they're not big fans, and Baiken is the wall. So now Baiken's story. So before we can even tell the story of Baiken, we have to tell the story of Japan in Guilty Gear. You see, Baiken is Japanese. And I know you think, well, yeah, obviously enough, I guess she's a samurai, what does that matter? Well, in Guilty Gear, Japanese people are special. Japanese people effectively are superhuman, and there's a specific event and series of events that led to Baiken being the curmudgeon that she is. At which point we enter Justice. Now, sometimes Justice is presented as this like weird robot Gundam style of thing, and sometimes Justice is just straight up Godzilla. And if you know how the tale of Godzilla in Japan usually goes, it's not a good one for Japan, and that's exactly what happens here. So Justice goes berserk and effectively destroys Japan entirely, kills the vast majority of the population, and thus begins the human versus gear wars known as the Crusades. Now there's actually a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes here because Guilty Gear is really weird like that, as Justice was about to be possessed by the Universal Will, and before that could happen, that man, Asuka Arquoits, basically fired off Justice's ultimate weapon, destroying and killing many millions of people, but otherwise saving the human race from immediately being dominated. He basically sacrificed Japan to save the rest of the world. Good thing most people don't know that though, because he's already not a popular person, that would make him extra less popular. So Baiken is one of those survivors, and after this and the Crusades have begun, the Gear versus Humans war, the United Nations has basically put all the Japanese into colonies, which are basically reservations only for the surviving Japanese peoples who are left, trying to prevent the extinction of the Japanese race, basically. But the thing is, the Crusades are now ongoing, full-on world-scale war, and not everywhere is safe. Where Baiken was staying was attacked by a bunch of gears, and they basically killed everyone. Baiken did survive, but not without losing an eye and an arm. And on that day, who did she see leading these gears? She saw that man. The gear maker, the person who she and many others thinks waged war on the world. And ever since that point, that's when she became the person she is today. She has dedicated her life to revenge. And so we enter the games themselves. Now, unfortunately, Baiken's track record throughout the greater plot is not that great. She's in the first Guilty Gear, although not as a normal playable character, she's a hidden character, and she does meet Justice. However, she basically gets bounced off. She is not strong enough to fight Justice. In the Guilty Gear X2 series, her quest takes her to find that man, and she does eventually meet that man, and she is, once again, unfortunately, completely outclassed. Not to say she's fully given up on tailing him. She actually forms a little bit of an alliance with Angie Mito, actually, in terms of getting information on him, but she's not really a physical match against Asuka Arquoits. Besides a lot of these things, she's sort of a semi-defender of the Japanese peoples and Japanese culture. She's not part of like any governmental body or whatever, but she does appreciate her heritage to a degree, and she does try to protect the Japanese people as best she can. While not really meeting any of her immediate goals in the Guilty Gear X2 series, she does play a little bit of a role in the Guilty Gear Xrd series in terms of the plot. So going all the way back before any of the games proper, the start of the Crusades, when Justice destroyed Japan. That man, Asuka Arquoits, basically fired off Justice at Japan because specifically he noticed that a lot of people were basically turning into living bombs. Somehow the Universal Will can influence Japanese people and turn them into giant bombs because Japanese people are special, and she can basically manipulate that and turn them into walking nukes. Come Guilty Gear Revelator, that sort of becomes an issue again, as that's one of the plans that the Universal Will has enacted. Now, Baiken herself, honestly, she's not too big of a part of that specific story. That's more of a Haehyun kind of thing. But Baiken protects Haehyun while Haehyun basically undoes the problem and fixes the Japanese people yet again. So, hey, she helped. So, during all of this, Baiken and Angie have just maintain contact. They're still talking to one another. Angie's searching for things on the Gearmaker / that man / Aska Arkreutz. And one of the things that, while not apparent in Revelator, but later becomes apparent in Guilty Gear Strive, is the person she's mad at may not actually be Aska Arkreutz, that man. As it appears during the time of the Crusades, there was 2 that mans. Specifically, a lot of the more heinous things attributed to Aska Arkreutz was not done by him during the Crusades, but it was done by Happy Chaos. So effectively, she's been spending most of her life chasing after the exact wrong guy. Now, how exactly she deals with this, that's a bit of an unknown, as technically that hasn't happened yet, because as of the time I'm making this video, Baiken is not in Guilty Gear Strive. By the conclusion of Guilty Gear Strive, Happy Chaos is indeed defeated, so you would think Baiken has missed her chance, but also, well, he came back in the end credits, so he's definitely not going anywhere. So will Baiken's quest for revenge finally be met? That, at the point of me making this video, is a bit of a wait and see. She's definitely coming to Strive, and some other fun little interesting facts is she won't be traveling alone this time. As going by the Guilty Gear Strive trailer, she'll be traveling with Delilah, who is Bedman's sister. So for her future stories, I guess that's a wait and see. Somehow though, I don't quite think she's gonna be letting Happy Chaos off the hook for maiming her and killing her family. There is almost certainly a fight brewing on the horizon. That all said, there you have it. So unfortunately, Baiken, despite being so popular, is not one of the heavy hitters in the franchise's lore. She's not quite on the level of a sole bad guy, but you know what? You don't need to be the most important character in the plot to be popular. And popular she is because kind of cool, gruff, nomadic samurai. Everyone loves that archetype, and that's exactly what she is. That all said, my friends, that is the ridiculous history of Baiken from Guilty Gear. The one thing we know for certain is Baiken's story is not yet finished. There is more to be told by the time she will come out in Guilty Gear Strive. So whenever that happens, make sure to get the game, see what she's all about. But for now, that is all the story that there is to tell. With all that said, if you guys could drop a like on the video, that would be incredibly and sincerely appreciated. This will be dropping on Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas to everybody, Happy Holidays. And otherwise, well, that's the end of this video. So thank you very much for watching, hope this video finds you well, and go out and play some Guilty Gear.
Yeah.